I was bluffed into this. I usually just do one-to-ones. I have a chalet in my garden, which is my sacred space, which is where I live most of the time. And I invite people to come and speak with me and hear my tales. And that is what I do. And I don't usually sit in front of an audience like this and tell my tales to all of you. But tonight, thanks to Dana, I'm here and I hope you enjoy what I have to say. The first thing I'd like to say is I'd like to read a poem written by a friend of mine who's here. My dear friend Aurea, who I have known for 60 years, and she's a poet and an artist and a delightful person. So I thought I would read her poem. It's called The Gathering. And as we are a gathering, I thought it rather appropriate. Once a year, when the wind is high and billowing clouds fill the sky, under the secret abode of the wind, the witches' gathering begins. Down on a swirling gust they sweep to scatter the leaves with their hurrying feet. Like shadows, they move through the darkening trees to a space in the wood so deep, where flickering lights hang from the boughs and broomsticks lie in a heap. As they gather, the air is alive with spells that sparkle and fly. Vapours and steam from their potent brews flow into the midnight sky. Whispering, laughing, they will dance till dawn touches the rim of the hill. Then they will vanish, swept up in the clouds. As the sun begins to show his head, the wind then gathers the mists of the morning and hurries them home to their beds.
Thank you, Aurea.
Well, I had an opportunity, I've had many opportunities to work with amazing, I know them as oracles, not mediums or psychics, because they are extraordinary people. They're not just the ordinary run-of-the-mill spiritualist medium. One of whom was Margot Williams. Some of you may have heard some of her work, and I worked with her for 15 years. 15 years I worked with her, from 1978, when she just began to receive what she called her drop-in communicators. Now, drop-in communicators, they're not ghosts, they are people, spirits who have something still on their minds that they need to express in order to allow their souls or spirits to move onwards. So I thought I would read you some of those to start off with. Now, the first one I'm going to read is Hugo Meynell. Your ear, I must speak. Blood sport is so wrong. It is the sport of the devil. I should know, as I was master of the hunt. It meant everything. Oh, the pack. What sport we all thought we were having. First the stirrup cup, then the sound of the horn, the hounds barking with excitement, and after such sport, the kill. A newcomer, a young member of the hunt, to be blooded. Sport. But how wrong, how cruel. How I have suffered, and how many like me have and will suffer. To see a living creature torn to pieces is more than cruel. It is evil. Oh, how I regret this past life, although enjoyable at the time. I was a man of wealth who lived for the chase and the hunt balls. After I had taken over the pack, the stables were enlarged. Oh, the excitement of the first hunt of the season. The cream of society came, lords, ladies, and even the Marquis. But what of the unfortunate fox that we hunted with ne'er a thought? Hunting still goes on at Quorn, where I lived on my lovely estate with my pack, my stables and my wealth, all to kill a fox in the most cruel way. My name was Hugo, but all was not going to be perfect. As when I went on the journey that needed no horse, no hounds and no foxes, I found myself being shown how wicked I had been to enjoy this blood sport. Then I was back in another life, a crippled beggar child, and in 1870 was killed by a coach and four. Ah, how the circle had revolved, as back again I was shown my life as Hugo. Another journey, and in 1939, a small child in Poland hiding from those who hunted. And by 1942, had been sent miles and miles, not by horse, but by cattle truck, on a train, in freezing weather, and then the gas chamber. Hell? No, it was not hell. I was just being treated as I deserved. Oh, those foxes. I was responsible for hundreds being torn to pieces alive and then celebrating. Yes, I have suffered an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I am going on now to greater glory and to seek celestial perfection, and I pray all men may see their own errors before it is too late. To cause suffering to a living creature is to be abhorred and is an abomination unto the Lord. And research proved him to be Hugo Meynell, said to be the founder of modern sport of fox hunting at Quorn in Leicestershire around the middle of the 18th century. So I think all those people who are against fox hunting actually have the right thing in their heads, because that's the sort of thing that will happen to you when you pass over. Now, the very second communicator to Margot was a man named William Sharpe, who was a Scottish author who also went under the name of Fiona MacLeod. And Fiona MacLeod was the mystical feminine side of William Sharpe. And so he wrote books in both names, and nobody knew during his lifetime that he was actually Fiona MacLeod. It wasn't until he had passed. But when he passed, he had troubles on his mind that haunted him. And he came through to Margot, and this is just an excerpt from the Wilfian Scripts, which was a book written. It had all the scripts that Margot received from William, and he had seen something that he wished he'd not seen, and something I think possibly is very relevant today because we're hearing so much about dreadful things in the world. And he wrote in short terse verse when he came through to Margot, and this is what he said. Wish had not seen murder of Ween. Man cut her throat, blood splashed on strange coat. From cup took sip, blood stained his lip. Heard other men sing, all standing in ring inside circle of stones where wind always moans. From bush where I hid, I saw what they did. They were wickedly led by man with large head. I will not belong to satanic throng, but shall always see men dancing with glee, as Ween loses life by evil sharp knife. A nightmare raises hair, hearing shrill scream, realise no dream, blood dripping red, each man is fed. Wash hands in burn, each man return to home and wife lead normal life. Lock still and bright in the moonlight, never will tell of seeing hell. Bad verse, got worse, bairn killed, heart stilled, dead child, men wild, in lock thrown, now just bone. With fear drunk beer, forgot sin with some gin. Spirit strong banish wrong with red wine, no more swine that cut throat, of bairn, not goat. This is what had plagued William's conscience. On his way home from this appalling experience, he observed a rabbit performing his ablutions and commented, "How simple is his life. He does not bear the burden of guilt, which sits darkly, right inside the very depth of me. Mine eyes have seen a sight which no one ought to see. How can I forget that scene, so etched forever on my mind?" Well, this, as you all know, I expect, goes on still today. And I won't make any comment about that. But William was definitely very unhappy and miserable after he'd passed. Now, I have some personal ghosts that I would like to tell you about. I lived in Ventnor. When I came to the island, I lived in Ventnor in a very run-down old property, which we had managed to acquire through a friend of ours under very good circumstances. And we lived there for about 11 years. We ran an antique and second-hand shop at number 147 High Street. It was very dilapidated. The children loved it. It had lots of room because there was a 3-storey block at the front, and behind that there was a big 1-storey room which had been used as Knight's library, and then adjoining that was a little cottage, and behind the cottage was what was once the place where the stables, where the horses were kept. My children, as they would tell you, didn't like the staircase. They used to run up the stairs. My youngest child used to run up the stairs, and she hated going to bed because she didn't like to be upstairs on her own. And then I had a friend come one day. Her name was Barbara. She was a Quaker, but she was also very psychic. And she said to me, "You do know you've got a ghost here, Carolyn, don't you?" Well, I said I had thought perhaps there was. I said, because the children are saying they don't like it, and there was a smell as you went in through the front door. The shop was on the right with its own door, but there's an entrance on the left which went into a long hall up the stairs, and there was a smell there, and it was smelt musty and damp and horrible. And so one day my husband said, "I'm going to replace everything in the hall. I'm going to concrete the floor in the hall." So he ripped out everything, and there was a cupboard under the stairs, so he ripped out the cupboard as well, laid the cement down, waited for the smell to go. It didn't go. It just hung around and hung around. So I said to Margot, "I think we've got a ghost. Would you come and sit on our stairs?" So she did. It was very creepy on the stairs because the house had actually been war damaged, bomb damaged, and so the stairs were at a slight angle, well, not a slight angle, they were at a real angle. And Reg actually took that staircase away and put another staircase in, but the smell was still there and the feeling was still there. Anyway, she came and sat on the stairs, and this is what she heard. Oh, I failed to mention this too. This was when we first moved there, really, and I was doing upholstery and Reg had gone to Bristol. and I was working in the workroom. The big room behind the shop we used as a workroom, and I was working in the workroom, and I had the dog with me, and I had this great big table, and I had a rocking chair on the table that I was stripping, and the telephone went. There was a little room off the side of this great big room, and the telephone rang. Now in those days you didn't have a telephone that you could pick up and take somewhere. You had a telephone on a wire like this. So I rushed in, answered the phone. By the time I got there, the phone had rung off, and I could hear footsteps coming down the big room. And I thought, there's somebody here. And nobody was there. The children weren't there. Reg wasn't there. And I was working, and it was getting on for midnight. So I thought, this is strange. So I pulled the wire of the phone, and I was going like this to see who was coming, but I couldn't quite reach the door. So I thought, I'll put the phone back on the hook and I'll go and see who's out there. When I got out there, there was no one there. But the dog was a shivering wreck under the table. And I thought, there's someone here. I can't see it. The dog can see it, but I can't. So I thought, it's time for me to pack up and go. Not staying down here with whatever's here. So Margot came, and this is what she heard. Stop it, please. He's chasing me. My baby due next month. Oh, help me. He's shouting. Someone, please. Then the fall. Oh, my baby. God, my baby. Please come back. The mist is thick. Margot took 3 or 4 times to do this. How happy I am that I can speak. These stairs caused me to fall and break my neck. I went through a long tube of mist together with my unborn child. The man I had married had brought me here to stay, as he had stolen a Clasone sovereign case with many sovereigns in London, and his friend lived here. Then the fall. He was a man of uncertain temperament. Now I can tell my story. I hope it will allow me to continue my journey to greater places. My time has gone now. Come back. Come back. I looked down at my crumpled body. I saw a silver cotton-like attachment breaking from it. I felt no fear. I saw much hustle. The man who we stayed with liked it not. My husband was in a tizzy, yet grieved not. My poor body, which was the prison for my child, was hastily bundled into a large box and placed in a gig. Somewhere it was driven that night and put in a hole. I felt sorry and have returned here trying to attract attention. I have succeeded at last. Time is going. Come back once more. I was an orphan. An aunt had brought me up and had died just before I married Tom. My name was Jessica. I was horrified when I found Tom was a thief. He would go into a crowd and pick pockets. He would break into a house and steal. How many tears I shed over his misdeeds. Then he was nearly caught. That was the reason for coming to his friends here. His friend was not happy being used as a shelter, but I had to have somewhere as he saw my condition. There is so much I will be allowed to speak just once more, and then I know with prayers and thoughts I can go onwards. With no brothers or sisters, no one was to miss me. My aunt had given me a warning about marrying a man beneath my station in life, yet I heeded her not. It was around 1872 or 3 this fall was to take my earthly life. Now I know I have friends where time has a meaning. For me it does not. My thoughts will linger no more. I shall go onwards to meet my child. I was foolish to allow myself to stay. Thank you all so much. I hope I will inconvenience you all no longer. And as Margot finished writing, an all-pervasive scent of roses filled the air, and she called Reg and I in to smell this perfume. It was there, and it was so strong. And then it was gone. And she'd gone. Bless her heart. I think about all these ghosts still, you know. But she wasn't the only ghost haunting our house. No, she wasn't. Reggie's mother came to stay, and one morning she came down and she said, "There's a ghost in my room." She said, "I saw her shadow walk across the room." So I thought, well, here's another job for Margot. We better get the Ghostbuster in. So she came, and this is what she heard. The rain kept coming in. I worried so much, got wet through. Must mend window. Come here and mend window. 3 times I cut my hand on the window. He wouldn't mend it. I told Mrs. Knight about it. I prayed in the church he would mend it. It was months being broken. Glass all jagged, tore my new gown. Mend the window. I took all my troubles to God. Torn gown, broken window, dirt on floor, missing button, broken button hook, shoehorn, glove stretchers that separated. I worried God so much. Now I can worry over others. Must stay to worry over things that don't go right, or how I want them. "64, 64, 64. I did pray so often, every day, many times. 64 it was. I can now see a silver thread. Do not understand. It is pulling me, wants me to follow. 64, 64. 64 men lost from the ship my pa was on. My mother lived at Chichester. Came here on my own to help. The broken window, the dirt. Cannot understand, all very confused. The cord is pulling me. I do not want to go. I want to stay here, but a voice is calling, "Sarah, you must come. Please help me stay. I want to so much." 64 men lost at sea. I can watch the sea. The sea took so many. I want to, but cannot stay. I may come back if I can, but I am going on to sea. My fault, Pa was one of the 64. Hugh told him of the ship, and it was me that took Hugh to meet Pa. 64, 64. Came here to forget. Then the broken window, like the broken window at Mrs. Knight's back then. 64, my fault, Hugh's fault. Worry about missing button. God did not heed me. 64. The cord is pulling. I will go, but shall come back if I do not like it. I will, as I have a strong personality. Pa said so, Hugh said so. Pray for me sometimes. And thank you for listening. I like the lady with you, she is kind. Thank you. I may come back, but I am going on now. Well, the lady was my mother-in-law, sweet, gentle soul. Well, we were there for 11 years, and we didn't have any more trouble from the ghosts, and the children were happy to stay in the house. And then we moved to the Grove. The Grove was a big old, well, I can show it to you because there's a picture of it in this book, and then you'll see what it was like. But it didn't look like this when we moved in. It looked pretty ghastly because everything was wrong with it. If I can find it in here. There it is. Can you see? It's a big house that looks like a vicarage with a centre porch and 3 stories. But it had a crack from top to bottom when we moved there. The paper was hanging off the walls inside, the damp was in there. There was nothing right with it. And it was quite a magical experience how we came to have the Grove, because we'd decided to move and we'd found a bungalow in Wroxall, and we were arranging to buy this. And then a friend of mine came and she said she was very psychic. Not one of the three that I've worked with. Her name was Yvonne and she lived in Ryde. And she came into the big room, which was now no longer a workshop, it was a sitting room for us by then. And she came in and she said, "Oh, Carolyn," she said, "this place has lost all its energy, something's wrong." I said, "Yes." I said, "We're moving." I said, "We're moving to a bungalow in Wroxall." "Oh, no, you're not," she said. "You're not moving to any bungalow in Wroxall." I said, "Yes, we are." I said, "It's all going through." She said, "I'm sorry." She said, "You're not." She said, "I'll tell you where you're moving. You're moving to a double-gabled house with a porch in the middle." She said, "It's got a gravel drive leading up to it. There are trees surrounding it. And there's either one old person living in it or it's empty. And the paint is peeling off everywhere. That's where you're going." I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "I've just spent 10 years doing up this place." I said, "I'm not going to another place." Well, it just so happened that I met someone who I was giving a lift into Newport, and she said to me, "Oh, by the way, the woman rang up and said we couldn't have the bungalow." That was it. So I thought, "Oh, right, we'll start again." So we started again, and I picked up this lady on the bus stop, because there was a bus stop outside 147, and she was going to Newport. And I'd been looking at properties until I was sick of looking at properties. And I said, when I came home this particular night before, I said, "If God wants me to find a house, he can bloody well find me one." And I was so cross and angry, and I had a headache that was pounding on my head like this. And I just thought, I cannot go on looking for another property. I cannot do this. So I picked this lady up at the bus stop. She was going to Newport. I said, "I'm going into Newport." She said, "So am I." So I was telling her the story about looking for properties, and she said, "I know just the property for you." I said, "Do you?" "Yes," she said, it's an 8-bedroomed house. It's got it's in 3/4 of an acre. It's in Middle Ventnor, and it needs everything doing to it. She said, "I wanted my husband to buy it," but she said, because he's a commander in the Navy, she said he wasn't going to buy it for me because it was ridiculous for two of us. So I said, "Well, where is it?" She said, "Well, I'm not telling you." Oh, I said, "That's nice." She said, "But what I will do, I will get in contact with my friend who's the owner, and I will ring you tonight at 5 o'clock. So I went home and I said to Reg, "Do you know of a house in Middle Ventnor, 3/4 of an acre, in its own grounds?" "No," he said, "no." So anyway, he said, "She won't ring." Always his glass is half full. Half full. Mine's always mine's always full. His is always half full or half empty. Anyway, she did ring, 5 o'clock. She rang up and she said, "Well, the house is called The Grove. It's in Grove Road. And if you go to the agents tomorrow, you will be very welcome to go and have a look at it. And it's Mr. Zuber's house." So, 6 o'clock the following morning, I'm woken up by Reg with a cup of tea. Unheard of. He never does things like that. He said, "I've been to look at the house." I said, "You have?" "Yes," he said. "It's like the Hammer House of Horrors and I'm going to buy it." I thought, no, I can't bear this.
That's a challenge.
Oh, likes a challenge, don't go there. So anyway, we did buy it. But the amazing thing is, the evening before, I had actually walked up Grove Road and looked up this driveway to where the Grove was. You couldn't see the house, but all you could see was a palm tree. Now imagine this, on a lawn with a wrought iron seat underneath and 3 red and white fairy toadstools, about that big, handmade, under. And I'm looking up the drive and I'm thinking, "Oh, how magical. This is lovely." So I went back home. Reg said, "I've been to see the house." He said, "I drove up." He said, "Did you see the fairy toadstools?" I said, "Yes, I did." So in the morning, he's brought me the cup of tea. Says it's like the Hammer House of Horrors. And I'm thinking he's going to go to the agency and he's going to buy this house. And I want to know if it's the right house. So I said, He'd gone. I said, God, I want a sign and I want it right now because he's going to buy it. If I don't have a sign, I need it. So I thought, I'll just go upstairs and clear my youngest daughter's bedroom. So I went upstairs to make the bed, and lying on the floor there's a Stella Polaris magazine. And I pick it up and it falls open and it says, and there in front of me were 3 red and white fairy toadstools. I thought, thank you, God. All right, I know I'm going to get this house. So we moved a year later because the roof had to be done and various other things. You couldn't move into it like it was. And there was a ghost, needless to say. One of the residents, by the way, the Grove, I used it as a sanctuary for people who had no home or were sick, or there were young people, old people. I filled the Grove with people who were in need. And they all lived together like a family, and I was the matriarch of the family. And when I wasn't looking after all this crowd of people, and I think there were 45 in the years that I lived there, I was doing the garden because the garden was in the same state as the house. Anyway, one of the residents said to me, I think I've got a ghost in my room. So I said, Margot, I think there's a ghost at the Grove now. So she came and she said, this was different. She saw a distressed young girl with bright bruising to her face, followed by a woman in a long, dark dress with leg of mutton sleeves. And then one of her guides told her, the scene you just saw was not earthbound, just memories that linger. The girl was very unhappy, and the woman too strict, as they were in those days. This will fade. Always keep sweet-smelling petals in the room, and that may help the memories fade quicker. And any smell, which is really due to old drawers, will go. Rest now. So that wasn't a ghost, but memories, if they are painful or unhappy, they do linger. And this is something I didn't realise, but I learnt that. Anyway, Rachel, who became a great friend of the children's, moved in with her whole family. They'd lost their business, and there was mum and dad and 2 young girls, and Vicky went off to live with her partner, with Dave, who she eventually married. And Rachel was about 17 at the time, and she was at college, and she was in one of the attic rooms. And she began to experience an unpleasant dream state. Now, I had a doll up there, and it was a big china doll, about that big. But somewhere along the line, it used to have a beautiful face, but somewhere along the line, the eyes had been pushed in, so it had empty eye sockets. And the children were terrified of it. Yes, they were. And so one night, after hearing something, she sat up in bed to see a hand opening the door. Too frightened to do anything, she pulled the covers over her head. And then she dreamed that the eyeless doll was sitting on the other bed in the room, staring at her with terrible, lifeless eyes. And then saw the doll's arms laying on the floor beyond the door in the hall. This was almost too much for Rachel. She stayed with friends the following night rather than spend another in the attic. So, who did I ask? Margot. She offered to come in the afternoon to see what was causing all this disturbance. I have made my presence known because I am unhappy. I have been here for years. I did not worry at first. Then people came and did the house up better than it was, although different from when it was new. That was when I came to work here. I was a maid, did waiting at table, did housework, and did other things as well. I shared the room with the other maid who cooked and did the washing. 2 of us worked indoors. One of the other rooms was for the man who gardened and saw to the horse and carriage. I got restless when it was in ruins, as I loved it here. Now I see different people come into my room, so many over the years, usually youngish people, and I just want one to stay and to love it. The girl who is here now is quite nice, but I wonder how long she will be here. I keep asking her, but she doesn't hear me. I'm sorry if I frightened her. I expect I will go onward now I've told you about me. I'm surprised at how many things she has. I only had 3 sets of uniform and 1 Sunday dress and bonnet, and a small cardboard box held my possessions. Tell her she is lucky. I'm going on now. My name is Maud, if she is interested. How much we have today, and how little they had in those days. How blessed we are, really. Sometimes too blessed, I think. Now, on my way here, I said to my daughter, as we came through Brading, I know that house there. I rescued someone there. And this was the story. It had an earthbound spirit with a romantic story involving a beautiful dress. The couple who lived there were aware of a cold feeling in one of the bedrooms and on the stairs, so we were invited over one afternoon. Pauline, the owner, had seen a shadowy figure on the stairs. Apparently, they had found a beautiful 1920s cream silk dress in the loft and fetched it for us to examine. Placed it in a box, carefully wrapped in tissue paper, the silk was just showing signs of rotting, but it was still a lovely dress, with a low waistline so popular in that era. We felt it had a link with the ghost, and we were not wrong. Margot and I sat on the stairs, and within a few moments a man's voice spoke. I loved her so much. We were meant for each other. She was beautiful. I bought her presents and we planned so much, yet nothing was to be. Oh, how I missed her. I went away and my parting present was the dress. She wore it the last night we were together. After a few weeks, I received the shattering news. She had to be with him. He needed her. He was not well, and she had to tend to his needs. Oh, my darling, I wept. Yes, a grown man, weeping for his lost love. I did not live more than 7 years after that. Then I was back here in this house. I lived with her in spirit form. Never mind him. When she died, she went onwards, but I was locked into the house and could not join her. I have had to wait to tell my story. It is kind of you to listen to me. I see a pathway leading to a brilliant light, and I hear her sweet voice calling me. I'm coming, sweetheart. I shall remain here no longer. Reading this out to the owners, we were full of questions. Who were they? Who was the man that needed her? Her husband, perhaps? No names were given, so we each put our own interpretation on this romantically sad tale. All we were sure of was the lady had a ghostly lover who admitted to living with her in spirit form. Now, Lady Henrietta of Appledurkham. Margot had a friend called Sue Robertson, and Sue and Margot were both able to see into the past. And when they visited Appledurkham, they would both see the house as it was in its heyday. And Margot would say to Sue, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And Sue would say, yes. She said, I can see the curtains are this, and the furniture's this, and there's bookcase there, and there's... So they saw. Both said the same thing. And I love Lady Henrietta. She's a ghost, but she doesn't want to go anywhere. Some ghosts do not wish to be released, as is the case of Lady Henrietta in the ruins of the once magnificent Appledurcombe house, who not only appeared to Margot but also to Sue. They've seen her quite clearly several times when the rooms have been suddenly transformed from a ruined shell to a lavishly furnished drawing room or library. The former had blue velvet curtains at the windows and a richly coloured carpet on the floor, and on one occasion Lady Henrietta was playing a spinet. She did not often speak, but one day she informed Margot she had no intention of leaving, as she was so happy there with her lover. She appeared to them both wearing different gowns each time, and both Sue and Margot saw the same scene, a brief glimpse of the past enacted before their eyes. Margot went alone one day and saw her coming down a staircase and entering the library. She went to a large bookshelf and removed a book. In our time, this room is nothing but a shell, with nothing in it. But Margot saw it with bookcases all round the walls, a large table in the centre of the room, and quite a few chairs about. Lady Henrietta walked towards her, smiling, and went to hand her the book. It was Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. She opened it at the Miller's Tale, but as Margot extended her hand to take it, her ghostly friend and the book vanished, and she was left standing once more in the ruins. There's one other one I want to read you. I hope I've got it here. Yes. This is another one about Appledurcombe, but this is about Fremantle Gate. If you all know it, it's a magnificent gate. And when I first went there with Margot, the cottage by the side of Fremantle Gate was in ruins, but it has now been restored and somebody lives in it. It's a magnificent gateway, and it was the gateway to Appledurcombe. And this is Lady Worsley. Not such a lady. I declare, he was the most handsome man I had seen. Dark hair, brown skin, twinkling blue eyes, and so tall. I had returned from London and Paris to find this Adonis open the gate for my carriage. As he touched his forelock, I granted him a smile and a nod. Such a stranger must be investigated by one who took lovers like changing a gown. The next day, I made it my business to find out who he was. And now I am here, looking for the rough peasant who meant more to me than my husband or the ton that I picked my lovers from. This Adonis was staying with his parents, who were the gatekeepers. He had his wife with him, and a mewling babe, she wet nursing an infant of a member of the household. We met when I let the pink curling feather from my hat loose to float to his feet. This started a conversation. He was tongue-tied at first, poor handsome creature. But to be tumbled in the hay like a village maid was a new experience. Now where is he? I left to return to London, but thought of him in my dreams. Back to London again, to Vauxhall Gardens, to Wight's, to the Assembly Rooms, to the arms of yet another lover, to balls and routs. Then to return to find him here, still waiting. Oh, his hands so rough, yet his caresses as soft and gentle as no other man. He was sent away when his wife had finished her duties as a wet nurse. La, how that woman irked me. Jealousy was my middle name, methinks. But never again did I inhale the pungent scent of the ferns without recalling the sweetest bed of all. My husband cared not, the most famous of all Worsleys, a rake, a serpent, But he did improve the house, that much I give him credit for. Now here I am waiting for what I do not know. The greatest of lovers is not here. The cottage so different, ruined, all ruined. No roadway, people in ugly clothes, women dressed as men. What can I do? Pray tell me. La, but you all wear such strange attire. One in pantaloons that are straight, and one in a long skirt without several petticoats, and one in a skirt so short. Fie, I feel faint at the thought, yet I know these strangers from another century have freed me from ever seeking my Adonis, the man whose body I yearned for. My sin was not just adultery, yet over and over again, and out of my station in life. I do crave forgiveness in the house of God, a house where one only went to impress the common people, to flaunt one's fine feathers, one's patches in the right spots, and one's hats, silken hose and satin petticoats. Now, nothing like this is needed. Just love of God, who I neglected. I see a shaft of light, a green band, and I can go onwards. I pray, do not abuse my soul where I am to go. Treat me kindly. Repentance will be sweet, I am so certain. Goodbye forever, gateway and cottage. Farewell. I loved her. She was so truthful.
And naughty.
So naughty and so truthful. Yes. What have I done here? No. I'm going to take you to Mottiston Mill. I don't know how many of you know Mottiston Mill. It's a favourite place of mine on the island. And we found it when the cottage was very neglected. And there were some old people living there. But it has now been restored. The old people died and the whole place has been restored. And it looks absolutely beautiful. But it hasn't got the same energy that was there when I went there. And a family chose to remain by a lovely pool surrounded by woods near Mottiston Mill. And when we went there, the pool was covered with small yellow water lilies and a few large pink ones. And as we approached, a heron flew off. We stood and gazed at this enchanting spot, watching dragonflies skimming across the surface and butterflies fluttering on the many wild flowers that grew there. But we were not alone. This lovely place was haunted by a family, and the father spoke. I met Molly at a dance. We knew we were made for each other. We were dancing to the tune, My Blue Heaven. It was wonderful. We married and came here on honeymoon. We loved it. A year later, our baby was born, a dear little girl. We brought her to this magical place. Molly wore a beautiful blue dress, a lovely blue. We called the place by the pool our Blue Heaven, and planned that when we died, we would meet here. How true a silly remark turned out to be. I tried to lead a good life. I enjoyed the odd pint of beer and my old pipe and a few cigars at Christmas. That was my weakness. My life was for Molly and the child. We were so deeply in love and always singing My Blue Heaven. We hoped we would all die together. We did, in a rail crash on the mainland. We found ourselves in our blue heaven around the pool and enjoying our self-contained life. It has been a real heaven, but now we must go onwards. I had to wait and tell someone how wonderful it has been. Real love that is true has brought us happiness and is everlasting. We will leave the pool for others who will no doubt come. I am very strong and will fetch you something to remind you of true love. Never look for perfection in anyone, as we all have a flaw or crack in our nature. I know some people reach their blue heaven. Thank you for listening. A beautiful sky blue opaque glass vase was apported which had a small crack. Never look for perfection, this gentle ghost had said. Now an apport is something that spirit is able to manifest. What it does, it takes it from one dimension, breaks it down, its molecular structure, and then re-puts it together again and brings it to where we are. And we had many of these when we used to dig up things, find things, hundreds and hundreds of things we found when I was rescuing earthbound ghosts with Margot. And that was just one. So none of us are perfect. We've all got a crack somewhere. And, we just got to accept that we're never going to be perfect here. I don't think we're ever going to be perfect, actually. Now, the next story is one of my favourites, and you've heard it. And this is the story of the fairy Doriania. And this was at the same place as my blue heaven. And this was the first time we came across this lovely, lovely pool. Colourful dragonflies flew among the lilies, settling momentarily on the heart-shaped pads, while bright red and blue damselflies danced here and there to music only they could hear. Great green gunnera leaves growing to one side gave shade and shelter where little creatures could hide. A glimpse of a rustic wooden bridge was seen at the back of the pond, behind tall stems of water iris, reminding me so much of Claude Monet's paintings of his garden at Giverny. But the whole area was all very wild and somehow timeless. To one side lay a rotting upturned wooden boat almost covered with moss and leaf mould that had possibly been used for clearing the pool. But now nature had taken hold and was delightfully doing her own thing. And beyond the pond, a small stream burbled where a host of golden kingcups kept company with huge gunnera plants. This was fairyland indeed, neglected by mortals, but an enchanted place where fairies and elves have their homes hidden from mortal eyes. As we stood there, Margot heard a tiny tinkling voice in her ear. It was the fairy who went by the name of Doriania. She made reference to Margot as only half mortal, and to Wally and myself as wholly mortal, and hoped it was wisdom to speak with us. We welcome you and your companions to this place where only goodness is. I am Doriania, and I live near the large leaves. They provide homes for many of us. We know you like us and would never harm us. We wished you lived in the house. The people there do not give us the respect we think we deserve. The beautiful dragonflies are our pets who trust us. We play in the water lilies, and you may hear singing, which is our young enjoying themselves. I am very old, and I hope very wise. Our food is here. The water, the meadow sweet, and the yellow lilies are so good for us. Enjoy yourselves in your paradise, and we will provide you with wisdom of the wild. You can see me now, all mauve. And as Margot lifted her eyes from writing, she caught sight of the mauve fairy, flying near the large gunnera leaves, and she did hear the singing of the young, although was unable to see them. One thing Margot did note was that the fairies are not as pretty as humans have drawn them. They have long pointed noses. Nevertheless, they are very colourful and a joy to behold. We were enchanted, and we marvelled at the wonder of communion with the fairy, who trusted us enough to share her words of wisdom. I have been willing that you return to my kingdom. You are welcome, and those with you. I am Doriania, who you spoke to before. There was once a very old lady who lived in the nearby cottage. This was many years ago when another queen was on the throne of England. She used to leave food for us outside her door, and in return we helped her with the work in her home. Since she died, no one has bothered us. We live quite happily without the help of mortals, as our food is different. Yet we appreciated her generosity. We only give help if we think a person deserves it. I have been here for so long. Centuries have flown by, and because we are wise and have so many animals and insects at our command, we can find out anything we desire. The old lady was our friend. She often saw us. I shall fly now to the aid of a rabbit that is in trouble. These are true fairy tales, and the following story ties in with what the fairy Doriania had to say. We were out one afternoon on a rescue mission at the old mill cottage, where Margot heard from Rose Mary Ann, a pedlar's daughter. She joined her pa on the road when she was 13, selling lace and ribbons, and was 18 when they called at the cottage. Rose Mary Ann was suffering with a very bad cough, and the lady who lived there could see she was ill, so out of the kindness of her heart invited her to stay until she recovered. She was with her for 2 weeks until she rejoined her pa. Rose Mary Ann made friends with the 6 cats, 5 ginger and 1 white, who lived at the mill with the lady, along with the birds and the fairies with whom the old lady spoke, and taught her to speak with them also. She left with her pa, but always returned once a year with gifts of lace or ribbon, until she died when she was 26. And at her passing, she found herself travelling along a silver pathway towards a light when she wished she was back with the fairies, whereupon, as if by magic, she found herself back at the fairy pool where she'd been so happy. And she now realised it was time to go onward into the light, but if we cared to search a nearby hedgerow, she would leave a gift for us. We searched on the ground and found a small china ornament of a sleeping ginger cat, another apport for Margot's collection. So Rose Mary Ann had spent time in the cottage with the old lady who loved and spoke with the fairies. But fairies live so much longer than humans and are witness to all that happens in their area and know the intentions of the people who pass by. The fairy Doriania knew we all had great faith and believed in the elemental kingdom, so she was willing to share her wisdom with us. And we heard from her once more, but not at the pool, actually. It's about a mile away. 1,000 fairy greetings to you, dear mortal. The birds told me you were here, so I have flown from the pool to speak to you. I know you remember me, Doriania. We are in the same dimension as the cherubim and angels, and we see them regularly. Our ancestors once lived on a distant planet before coming here. There are still fairies, elves, and others who dwell on planets so far away. I know you all have problems in your lives. I wish you well and hope they are soon solved. We have no problems. Come to the pool when you feel the time is right. We like seeing you there. My powers are strong, and I hope it will reflect back on you and make you stronger in spiritual and earthly matters. Always remember the pool, the birds that dwell among us there, and our pets, the beautiful dragonflies. Sadly, that was the last time we were to hear from Doriania, but we did hear from many, many others, not just fairies, elves as well, and the water sprites and the salamanders. They all spoke with Margot. She had amazing ears and amazing sight. She could see and hear, and as she heard, so she wrote it down. She always carried a pad with her wherever she went, and as she was hearing they were dictating, she would always write it down. So this is exactly as it came through when I was with her. We have to honour the fairy realm. You really do. And why is it that some people have such difficulty with fairies and cannot give credence to their existence, when there is evidence of their being in every breath of nature? For are they not the hidden energies behind its beauty? Every flower in the hedgerow and garden has a fairy responsible for its welfare. And just because most of humanity has its eyes and ears firmly closed to the possibility, does not mean they are not there. And I haven't seen a fairy, but I know they're there. Because in my garden, they make my flowers grow to enormous height. I had about 7-foot larkspurs, or delphiniums. I'm not sure whether they were delphiniums or larkspurs, but they were one of them. They grew outside my chalet and they were 7 feet high last year. I've moved them. This year they're normal height, because they're not in the energy of my chalet. But I've got foxgloves outside my chalet that are 7 feet high. This year. Once
you have that wren that sits right by your door as well.
Yes.
The little wren, and it just sits there, doesn't it?
It does.
Do anything, it just sits and waits for you, I think.
Once you've worked with the fairy realm, this hidden reality becomes part of your own life, bringing with it the joys associated with nature, and a delight in watching the ever-changing colours of spring, summer, autumn and winter. The fairies have said they belong to the angelic realm and carry out their tasks with love and joy. You only have to look at the apple blossom as it comes into its pink, tight buds that express themselves in such glorious beauty, bringing the promise of fruit in the autumn, to know the elemental realm has been at work. Now, the other person I've worked with is my nephew, Robin Wells. Robin is an amazing young man. He has been a channeler since 1995 of cosmic information. He doesn't do ordinary mediumship. He's a healer as well, but his information is from the cosmic realms. But he moved to Ireland in about 2005. And his land is called Gabriel's Return. And he went over there with his family, and he bought 3.5 acres of land with nothing on it except an Irish ruin with no roof, a workshop with a roof, a big house with a roof but no windows, and it was just a shell, no floors in it, the roof leaked, and another Irish ruin. And that was it. And he took himself, his wife and 2 children to live on this land. And the first thing he did was make the workshop into living accommodation for his family. And they lived in there for 2 years while he single-handedly built a 5-bedroomed house on the land. And he's trained as he was a builder. I mean, he is a builder. But I also worked with Mary Madison, and I don't know if any of you know Mary Madison. And Mary and Robin and I worked together. Margot and I worked together. And Mary came to see Robin's land because she went back to Ireland before Robin moved there. Anyway, she came back to Robin's. She came over to Robin's land when he bought it, and she said to him, "Robin," she said, "you've got a fairy tree on your land. What a blessing that brings with it." Well, you could hardly see the fairy tree because the land was that high in gorse and brambles. And that was the first thing you had to do, was clear the land. Anyway, when he was doing the Irish ruin, one of the Irish ruins, he had a young man Irishman called Didi come to work with him. And he said to him, "Robin, you've got a fairy tree on your land, don't cut it down." So the Irish know about these fairy trees. And they know that you don't cut them down and you don't interfere with the fairy realm, whatever you do. Anyway, this is the story of the fairy tree. Robin and I were sitting in his healing room at Gabriel's return one evening when he felt impressed to speak. And we were amazed to hear words from the realm of fairy, the grandmother of knighthoods, to be exact. Good evening, my dear Robin. We have never referred to you as Robin before. I am here as the grandmother of knighthoods. My children, you are talking to the fairy kingdom. The grandmother of knighthoods is here on the land with you, my child. You must understand that as you dig under the ground, you find something very special for yourself. We will be in contact with you, the grandmother of knighthoods. My child, we have waited for millennia for you to come here. There is much to be done on many different levels. You must understand that the agenda for us is not the same as for you, but we are part of the same, so therefore we can project whatever one needs for each other to be able to work. And the next few words made reference to the fairy tree on the land. You must understand the tree is fine, but it can be removed if needed, if it must be removed for your living purposes. We understand that you must feel circumspect about this procedure, but we have given you permission to do so. Plant another one for our purposes, and we will move there for you, my child. My child, we will continue with you at a later date. Thank you. There's another little bit about, I haven't got this in order. Don't say I left that page behind. I might have done.
Table. Yeah, it's not this one, is it?
No, that's Lillian. No, I must have left that page behind. How sad. It was about the fairy tree. I'd been clearing the brambles from around the fairy tree, and in the evening the realm of the tree spoke. They referred to themselves as the realm of the tree, and it's not here. If I come across it later, I'll read it to you, but I can't read it to you at the moment. Anyway, there was another fairy that spoke to Margot at Gatcombe. Greetings to you. I am a fairy of the woods, and I have come to speak to you. My name is Sai. Our time is different from yours, and we live for a very long time. Thousands of years ago, we lived on Earth, long before man. There were then many kinds of elementals, and sadly some are no more. We were not so wise then. The woodland fairies went to war with those who dwell in the fields, and the heathland fairies fought with those on the seashore. Such a waste of time, causing heartache and sorrow. We then realised that no one ever wins a war, and from then on, we have all lived in peace. We keep with our own kind, and just meet with others occasionally on neutral ground. It is a shame that mankind cannot live as we do. You have a gentle way with you, not wishing for possessions that others have. We help you to see us clearly, and you will see more of us. So yes, if you didn't believe in fairies before I came, I hope you do now, because they're there. And I just wanted to read you a poem that a friend of mine came. I went to tell her about the fairy tree, and her name is Jeannie Alder, and I met her many years ago, and I came across this poem she wrote, and I thought it was so nice that I thought I'd read it to you. It's called The Fairy Tree. Yesterday, Carolyn visited me, enchanting with talk of a fairy tree. We sat in the candlelight, sipping our tea, lighting the energies, exploring memories, feeling at peace. Caro resplendent in earth mother green, spinning the light in the candle gleam. Tales of a feather, some stones and a tree, magical, mystical fairy tree. Gabriel waits, the guides are here. Planet Earth so needs our care. Some will hear, the children see. We make our own reality. Caro and Mary and Robin make three, a trio to channel a trinity. Now she mentions Aris here. When Robin first started channeling, the medium between the cosmic beings who were speaking with him and Robin was Aris. And Aris used to take our questions or listen to our thoughts, and then we would get the answers at a later channeling session. So she says, Aris, dear friend, so pleased you are near. She could always tell when Aris was near. Aris would emphasize words to explain, writing in syllables. Listen again. Mystical. Miss. Tickle. Laughing with glee. We make our own reality. The stones that call, a feather that tickles, the signs meld together. Do you suppose a mystical link to that fairy tree? We make our own reality. We are not children, and Earth as we know is loaned to be shared and protected by those who care for the cosmos and life on this plane. The light and the love and the healing of pain. So Gabriel, will you promise, please, the caring of the fairy tree? We make our own reality. Thank you to Caro for sharing with me the seeds of the tale of the fairy tree, sending light and love across the Irish Sea. We make our own reality. Just be. Now, of course, when I was working with Margot, we didn't only have ghosts and earthbound. We had angels and fairies and extraterrestrials who communicated on a regular basis. And I'm going to read you, we call them the men from the stars. Her guide, Jane Taylor, who was the one who always helped her with communication with the men from the stars, called them those enigmatic men from the stars. This is the story of Edith. And I live a stone's throw from the field where Edith had this experience in Crocker Lane in Knighton. And she'd been haunting the Downs, hoping to see her men from the stars. I appear to have been forgotten. Many years ago, they called me the Lady in Grey, but no one does anymore. They do not see me like they did. I was a housemaid at a large house in Knighton at the turn of the century. My name is Edith. One hot night, I crept out of the house and walked up on the Downs. Cook was fast asleep and Mary was walking out with her young man, so no one heard me go. I reached the top of the field when I tripped over a log and hurt my ankle. I sat down. The moon was full that night. I took off my buttoned boot, and to my dismay, my ankle swelled up. How was I to get back? I then saw 3 men. At least I thought they were 3 men coming towards me. I was very frightened. One heard such tales about men with a lonely woman at night. They stopped a few yards away, and I asked them what they wanted. Instead of answering, their eyes flashed like green lights. They appeared to be speaking through their eyes to each other. They wore strange clothing, a silvery sort of suit in one piece, and they had long hair. Then a very strange thing occurred. One of them approached me and knelt down and touched my throbbing ankle. His touch was warm, in fact, quite hot. The swelling went down and the pain had gone. I hastily put on my boot, but could not do up the buttons as my hands were trembling so. The men then walked a little further away. A funny-shaped silvery object appeared, rather like half a tennis ball. 2 of the men entered it, and the 3rd man came towards me again. He held out his hand and I felt compelled to take it. He led me to this strange object and pointed at the door. I was terrified and pulled away. His green eyes lit up and flashed. Then he uttered one word. It sounded like Zekalinka. I ran off, thankful that my ankle was not hurting, but conscious of my unbuttoned boot that felt so loose. I reached the house to find no one had discovered my absence. I told no one. I worked at the house for some years, and when I died, I found I was back here looking for the men instead of going onwards. I have stayed, hence the name Lady in Grey. Now I shall go towards heaven. Will I meet them? I hope so. So to thank them for their help with my foot. Goodbye. The following day, Jane Taylor, who was Margot's guide, stated, "You heard an interesting story yesterday. It is quite true, and Edith now rests. There are many different types of souls who live on other planets, some like men, some quite different. Those with the green eyes, like Edith met, are not the ones who have made circles in the corn. I do not know what colour their eyes are, but they do not flash and talk with their eyes instead of their mouths. There are many coming to Earth, and much will be learned from the earthbound who have had UFO experiences." This one I love. He's a little fellow. He's only 16 inches high. And his name was Ord. And this happened in July 1986. And Margot had been feeling really tetchy all morning. And she had a headache, and she didn't know what was wrong, and Wally didn't know what was the matter, and he didn't seem to know that she needed to go somewhere. And anyway, she eventually rang me up after a guide told her she had to go to Shorrell Down, near the pond, where a very strange story unfolded. Many months ago, a strange craft had landed in the field on the other side of the pathway, and one of the occupants, Ord, filled with curiosity, wandered over towards the pond, never having seen water before. He said he was able to speak any language, and that he came from a place millions of miles away, but the craft left without him. Ord panicked instead of remaining calm as he had been taught, and the water was poisonous to him, and he died, and his body disintegrated. Ord was very small, only 16 inches high, and no one saw him. If he had stayed calm, he would not have been earthbound. He thought it was the water sprites who told him that a lady with a light of silver like the moon would be coming to help him. And although Margot did not hear his voice, it was Ord who caused the uncomfortable pressure as he called for her. He was now able to go onwards and leave the earth, adding that one day she would not only see a craft from his planet, but also one of his companions. This little being touched my heart with his sad tale of being separated from his companions and his world, and it brought to mind the story of E.T., the extraterrestrial. But that was not the end of the tale, because in June 1990 we had a very pleasant surprise while sitting in a field beside Knighton radio station. This was one of our favourite fields, and we call it the Seven Sisters Field, because it's above Seven Sisters Road. And also it has to do with the Pleiades. Margot heard a voice speaking in her ear. It was Ord, who came to say how grateful he was for her help 4 years earlier. He had been resting since, but was now ready to incarnate once more on his own beautiful planet. He does not have to wait as long as we do between lives, as his time is different from ours. Ord had the opportunity to preview his new life, a very happy one, as he was to be the leader of his people due to his great knowledge. He wished to thank us and to say that not all creatures from other planets are bad or rude. He was referring to our previous ET communication here because they hadn't been rude, but they'd just been a bit off with us because we refused to leave some clothes for them. They wanted something to do with our perspiration, and they'd asked us to leave some clothes on a high plate. And I said to Margot, we mustn't do that because I know that the Faeries try and get control of people through their clothes, and if you leave something for the Faeries, they can have control over you. So I said, I feel very happy about that. Anyway, we didn't leave them, and they were a bit rude to us. However, and that's what Ord was actually referring to then. He knew we were all sympathetic to his predicament on Earth and commented that his speech was much clearer now. And it gave us such joy to hear from this small being. In August 1991, we were at the duck pond of Hardingshute to see strange marks in the nearby fields, when Margot was surprised by Ord, who now felt he knew her and quite at ease in his presence. He was glad we had come, because the next day would have been too late, for it was to be the day of his reincarnation into a new body. Unlike Earthlings, he would have total recall of his past life. He repeated that he was to be the leader of his people, and if Margot took a clean sheet of paper, he would assist her to make a drawing of him. Aware of the inclement weather, he had guided us to the duck pond, as he is still fascinated by water, yet it is not necessary where he comes from. He wished us goodbye for the final time, and good luck in all we do. Jane Taylor, who works with the spacemen, commented, "The authorities will always deny the existence of spacecraft, but the men from the stars had been very active of late, as they are afraid of what might happen to Earth if a big war breaks out, because they have already lost the life force of 2 planets in their galaxy through wars. They are not happy about greetings with those in authority, whether in England or elsewhere in the world, but do wish for peace between all nations and planets." I think I must have a drink of water. Margot and I wrote a little book. It was called The Answer, and it was about our investigation into a particular crop circle that happened. It was the very biggest crop circle that happened in 1990, I think it was, and it happened at Alton Priors in Wiltshire, and I went to have a look at it, and she asked me to bring some stones home from the formations. There were oblong formations and round formations, and there were that was it. This is it. Here. That was the one. And she asked me to bring stones from every thing and those energy marks there. Anyway, that was that, and this is this. We wrote a little booklet on the ETs and crop circles after we'd been involved in rescuing so many ghosts who'd spoken of their own experiences with craft from space that often resulted in their curiosity or fear keeping them earthbound. But Yavanisha was one of those who visited Earth in her ship. "My name is Yavanisha. I came in a small spaceship which disintegrated near here. There were 4 of us in it, 2 females including me and 2 males. We had come from a larger ship just outside your atmosphere with 20 crew members on board. We came from a planet trillions of miles away. We came in peace and to make markers in the fields where crops grow. Already 2 had been made by us in a place you call Wiltshire. We circled over to make one in a field near here, but something went wrong. We came too close to water, and that caused the trouble, and we became specks of dust. This was in Freshwater Bay on the Isle of Wight. As I was in charge, it was my fault, and here I have remained. I am happy to be able to communicate with you who has great powers, hearing me like this. I am speaking in a tongue strange to me, which you understand. My name, Yavanisha, means star in space, which meant I was to spend my life travelling from one planet to another. We are given names which determine what we do in life. We came in peace, and to show this we made energy marks and circles in your fields. The circles are to show the shape of our ships. We are like you in many ways. Our reproductive organs are different. We do not carry young as long as females on Earth. We live far longer and do not age like Earth people. We do not require entertainment, as this is a waste of energy, and we stay happily with the same partner all our lives and choose to work together. It is unfortunate I became trapped. I stayed near this pool and cliff, and at times it has been pleasant, but not always. I've only been here a year or so. Now I shall continue my journey through space to another planet, presumably where we will all meet one day. I am grateful to have made contact with such an agreeable Earth person, and hope your planet survives the punishment it receives from those who dwell on it. Any questions? Any thoughts?
What would we know the fairy tree as?
The fairy tree?
Yes, what name would we give it to?
What type of tree?
It's an apple tree. It was an apple tree, and it came into blossom and gave so much fruit. It was beautiful. I've got a picture of it here. I'll pass it round in a minute. I wrote a Christmas message. This was my Christmas message in 2008, because I've taken to writing a message and sending it with... I don't really send cards, but what I do is I put them in a card and send them out to all my friends and people I think who will be interested in hearing the things that I have to say. And what happens, I sit down and it's almost as if I am receiving. I sit down quietly and then the words just flow. And this was about angels. Angels accompany our every waking moment and guard us while we sleep. The word angel is derived from the Greek angelos, meaning a messenger. They are the messengers from other realms who care about humanity. They are the watchers who keep us under surveillance as we tend this garden known as planet Earth. Just at this moment in time, there are those of us who are not doing a very good job of husbandry and whose ideas have been somewhat deflected from love. This has been noted by the recording angels of the great angelic host, with the result that many signs have appeared in the skies, the orb phenomena, and upon the earth, the crop circles. These signs are not there to be ignored or ridiculed. They are there for a purpose, and it is time to stop burying our heads in the sand, hoping it will all go away and everything will be the same as before. It will never be the same again. It is time to open our eyes and ears to the voice of the universe. This is no longer the prerogative of the mystics, magi, and seers, because we can all hear the voice of Mother Nature in the storms, the floods, the volcanoes, the earthquakes, and tsunamis. Will we listen to her cries, Or will we continue to desecrate and pollute this fragile, shining blue orb spinning in space? There are big changes afoot, and this is why the angels are coming ever closer and taking on many forms that may appear strange to us. They are preparing the people of planet Earth for the Christing, for the great leap in consciousness that will herald the reign of Christ the King and an age of peace for those who hold love in their hearts for all. People all over the world are beginning to awaken to the subliminal messages of these signs. Children are being born with a different way of knowing. You all have them in your families. Every one of you have these children in your families. They are here to be teachers for their parents. They are already masters and have descended into the human realms to bring faith and hope in what appears to be this dark time of financial crisis, wars, violence, and corruption in high places. These bright and shining young ones are our hope for the future, the way showers, as was the child Jesus when he addressed the elders in the temple so long ago. These children carry the Christ light to every corner of the globe. Let us celebrate their glorious presence among us with the angels who watch so carefully over them, speaking softly in their ears to give them words of wisdom. The world has great need for these little ones who sometimes find it very difficult to be in the world. It is up to each one of us to love them unconditionally and enable them to carry out their purpose, as these children truly do walk with angels. The Christ energy brings love into action, and love is all-seeing, all-encompassing. There can be no lying to yourself anymore, no deceit, no manipulation of others for your benefit, no secrets. Everything has to be revealed and open, especially your heart. You are very vulnerable, but your strength lays in your accessed knowledge, the gift of those other selves, those magnificent beings who appear in many forms, archangels and angels, the men from the stars, guides and guardians, ancestors and the kingdom of fairy, spheres of light, and the new children on the block, the indigos, crystals and rainbows, who are incarnated, carrying this Christ love energy to be a witness and example for humanity. These children have taken on the mantle of humankind for the first time, and they wear this cloak with difficulty. They have no understanding of how difficult it is to live with the lies and deceit of the world. They are innocent and have no guile. It is a hard road they are treading, and they need to be understood for who they are and the gifts they bring. They need the cushion of love to protect their gentleness, their truthfulness, and their restlessness and rebelliousness, because these children are systems busters and have come here with the sole purpose to change the way things are on planet Earth. They are our saviours. If you are blessed to have one of these children in your family, you will recognise them by their inability to accept anything other than truth. They have an uncanny discernment which can be very disconcerting, and are quite able to see through any mask that you try and wear in their company. And don't bother, because the embarrassment will be yours. And what are you trying to mask anyway? These words are from some of the children who have chosen to come into my family. Aidan, age 6, he's 20 now, he's nearly 20 now. When he was 6, he came down to me one morning. I was sleeping on the bed settee. This is over in Warminster. And this little boy has Asperger's. And he puts his hand on the side of my chair and he said to me, 6 o'clock in the morning, and these were the only words he said to me. Grandma, do you know that love is the most important thing in the world? And then, and at another time, he said to me, crop circles are the language of the aliens. And Jessie Rose, when she was 9, and she's now about the same age. Is life worth living? Is death worth dying? Is love worth loving? Is hate worth hating? Is music worth listening to? Is silence worth being silent? We are not all worth everything, but we are all worth something. 9 years old. And then she said, the world is without end, the sea spirit may cry, and the land is for those who believe in the world. And Toby, aged 9, told me, orbs are the souls of angels. So listen to the children. May you too be blessed with the presence of angels in your life. Oh, I've come to the end. I don't know what to say.
I think time just stood
Flies
still.
by, doesn't
Well,
it? Like the
just stood
fairies.
still, yeah. Any questions?
I did bring some pictures, by the way. I thought you could pass them round because
Well, if you leave them on the table, they can have a look while
Yes.
they're having refreshments or something.
these are some of the apports that I've received with Margot. Those are some of the apports. These are pictures of orbs that I've taken. I used to spend time in my garden when I lived in Ventnor. I would go out I lived in a chalet in the garden, I still do. And I would go out every night around about midnight, 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and I would just focus my camera into the sky and these pictures would turn up on my camera. Now, I never saw any of them. They are absolutely spellbinding. When you blow them up, they are full of colour, magnificent, and sometimes I would get big, what I called veils, and the orbs would break and they would spread out and this big veil would come round them. Sometimes they would just have holes in. Sometimes they would be big rods of light, like a big blue rod of light, and then from that rod of light would be orbs being expressed either end. They were just amazing. And the colours of some of them. There were electric sparks like that there. And I just went on taking them for quite some years. And the reason I began to take them was because I went to Abajania in Brazil to see John of God. Now, I don't know whether any of you have had an experience with John of God. John of God's going through a rather nasty time at the moment, but I will tell you that I experienced a miracle. Many miracles have happened with John of God, and I was with some people I met there, and they took that photograph in the garden of the posada we were staying in, and as you can see, it is absolutely full of orbs. Souls of angels, my 9-year-old tells me they are.
Do you ever get sort of faces in them?
Yes, I get faces in them. I get things being ejected out of them. all sorts of things. Now, when I lived at this little terrace cottage, my chalet was beside a chapel that had been used for prayer and meditation in the past. It was the holiday homes for the London City Mission, and of course the London City Mission used to come down there and get a fortnight's holiday a year. And I often think that the energies there were very strong, and also I lived under the woods. The downs go up like that, and the woods are right on my garden. And I mean, some of them would be so huge, and I would take a photograph, and I would see the photograph, and it would shock me. You know, it was as big as that. Amazing things, amazing. I saw these amazing things there. Anyway, as I say, I went to see John of God, and I had very bad psoriasis on my hands and feet at the time, which I'd had for, it must have been 10, 15 years. And my Robin went first, Cosmic Robin went first, and he had an operation with a knife in his back, and removed a cyst with no anaesthetic, no pain. John of God just went in with a knife, took it out, and when John of God was operating, he was always photographed all the time. And when you saw his arm, it would be just light. His arm would disappear and there would just be light. And sometimes his whole body would be encased in light. And he had about 42 entities who worked with him. And I've seen his eyes change from brown to blue, sometimes depending on who was working through him. Anyway, I went to him and I stood in front of him. You all line up and you stand in front, and he doesn't speak a word of English. He just writes down, he looks at you, or the entity, it's not John of God, it's the entity working through him, looks at you, and John of God writes something on a piece of paper, and he wrote Kashwera 7 times 7. Kashwera was the sacred waterfall. So I went to the sacred waterfall 7 times. Now when I went, you could go to the sacred waterfall and you were naked. The women went at one time and the men went at different times. And I went with my friend Roma, and we stood under this sacred waterfall, and it was bitterly cold, and you're surrounded by all these trees because you're up in the Amazon. And this waterfall just falls on your head, you know, and you have this amazing experience. And it was, I just knew as the water fell on my head that I was a goddess, and we're all goddesses. But it's the realisation, and I stood there and my arms went up in the air like this, and this water's pouring down on my head, and I'm just saying, I am a goddess, like this. And it's just an amazing experience. And these great big blue butterflies were flying around. And then what happens? All the negativity is washed out of your body, and it goes down with the water as it goes down this stream. And you just feel whole and pure. It's just amazing. Anyway, within 6 weeks of coming home, my psoriasis had vanished. That was a miracle. And I saw other people who had experienced miracles. But he's unfortunately going through some very nasty times, because John the man became a man, and all sorts of nasty things are being said about him. But, you know, we mustn't judge another person. We can't judge another person until we walked a mile in their moccasins. So you just accept and you love. And love is acceptance in action. And if we learn to accept everything that comes our way, and always remember the world is doing exactly what the world is meant to be doing at this moment in time. But as long as each one of us carries the light, carries the energy of love, and expresses it in your daily life, you don't judge anyone. And whoever comes into your life, you treat them equally. We are one. We are not thousands of millions and billions of people. We are one consciousness having an experience on this particular planet at this particular time. And there's like a big, it's like a big net, but it's not, I don't call it the World Wide Web, it's like a big net, and each one of us is like a little dot on that net, but the net goes out and we're all connected, every one of us, and we're all part of the body of the Creator. You can call it God, you can call it whatever you like. It's easy to say we're all cells in the body of God, and we're all having experiences for that body. That's all I've got to say tonight.